All right. Did you want to?
I'll start. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yolanda Payne, and with me is my colleague, Terry. We both are fellows at the Constellations Center. And today we're going to talk about developing a computational thinker. So for the agenda, we're gonna unpack what that means, and then we're going to talk about some vertical alignment across the grade bands, and then we're going to show you 3 ways that you can achieve some of the activities associated with computational thinking across 3 different platforms: Tynker, MakeCode, and CodeHS. So as we were looking through the research and the materials on computational thinking, there are a multitude of definitions, but we like this one, and it says it represents a universally applicable attitude and skill set that everyone, not just computer scientists, would be eager to learn and use. And so similar to the scientific method, if you think about computational thinking as a set of steps or a way of thinking that can guide you in processes, not just when you're thinking about computers, but thinking about everyday life, is how we would like to see computational thinking thought about. So I'll let Terry describe this slide here.
Again, many people believe there are different ways to define computational thinking, but one that I believe in, and a lot of folks believe in, there's 4 pillars to CT, and that is decomposition, pattern recognition, abstraction, and algorithms. And at each of the different grade bands, I guess what will be required of understanding computational thinking will be different. So like in the elementary level, the middle school level, the high school level, the understanding and the evidence of mastering CT is a little different. And we're going to discuss those things. So you want to talk about your...
So what I did here is pull the computational thinking standards that Georgia has. And I'm a big picture type of person. So I took all of those words and put them into word art to see what showed up across those grade bands. And so these are just the computational thinking standards for the Georgia standards for K through 12. Well, K through 8. And we're going to talk about why we don't have 9 through 12 here on another slide. But you see that thinking, computer, problem solving were words that showed up repetitiously throughout all those standards. And for K through 8, there were 25 pages of standards, and computational thinking was one of the standards that was specifically addressed. But for that, I really like that problem solving and use. These are not skills that are just, abstract, go sit them on the shelf and only pull them down for when you need them for computation, for computer science. But these are skills that can be used across content areas and across disciplines. And so here, you'll see some of the standards. We won't take a lot of time to show you these, but when you're unpacking standards, usually you look at the verbs. And so the graphic did a great job of doing that. So this is K through 2. And they clarified the statements if you needed further clarification. I also like that they had vocabulary terms that if you're new to computer science, you might not know what they meant. So they had clarifying statements and they had vocabulary. So they're very easy to read and give you lots of leeway. And another thing about the Georgia standards is that they said you don't have to ascribe to completing, this by 3rd grade, this by 4th grade. These standards are fluid. And so across these grade bands, you're going to be going across using the standards in different ways. So here's some of the elementary 3 through 5. And then...
I think we saved the high for later, right?
Yes, but we should still have, yes. So here, when you're looking at computational thinking in grades, K through 5, the goal should be solving problems using computational thinking. And one of the evidences that this is done is pattern recognition.
So one of the tools that is very user-friendly for elementary school students is Tynker. For those who've never heard of Tynker, it is an online platform. It is free. There are paywalls though. So unfortunately, there are some parts that you can't achieve or can't access without paying for a subscription. But Tynker does a very good job of giving students visual representations of computing, and they have to solve different things like puzzles. Sometimes they're allowed to build games and graphics. And so the one particular exercise, or a couple of exercises that I was able to research, happen to allow students to pattern recognize or recognize patterns and also implement algorithms. And I think in the previous slide, we talked about how for K through 5, the goal is to problem solve using computational thinking, but not necessarily understand what CT is. So they may not understand what abstraction is and what decomposition is, but being able to use those 4 pillars to solve problems. So I have for us, let's see if I can get into here nice and neat. Yeah, okay. And I'll try to zoom in a little bit. Is that kind of small, or can you see that? Okay. So speaking of pattern recognition, this particular lesson, this is lesson 2 in Tynker under the Candy Quest theme. And so if you go to the repeat the pattern activity, and so you notice immediately that there's a pattern to solving this, right? The person has to, or this little object has to move forward, jump over the thimble, move twice, jump over the thimble, and move twice. So it's inside the, I guess the last 2 jumps, there's a pattern of moving twice in order to jump over the thimble. So let's see if we can accomplish that. And so Tynker uses blocks. They actually have the option for blocks and text-based. I wonder if I can turn off that sound. Anyway, so I'm going to walk first, then jump. And then I have 2 walks, and then a jump. And then you notice the pattern now. So I'm walking, I'm jumping, I'm walking, walking, I'm jumping, I'm walking, walking, and then I'm jumping. Now, immediately they may not know that you can use this repeat function, right? Suspenseful music, yes. They may not know immediately that they could use this loop function, and that's okay. It's okay if they program this sequentially, just going step by step by step. And let's see what happens here. If I did it correctly. Oops, what did I miss? Oh, they wanted me to use the repeat block. So I can get rid of that. So I'm going to move first and then jump. So what am I going to repeat 3 times? Anyone want to answer in the chat? How could I solve this? Move, move, jump. Okay. Do I want that inside the loop? All right. So are you wanting that? Or is there something that needs to happen outside of the loop before I get into my loop? And I'll walk before the loop, okay? And then run my loop. Let's see if that works. Oh, you forgot something. You need to move, jump. Okay. walk before the loop. Okay, got that in there. So walk, jump, walk, walk. I'm still looking at the chat to see if anyone's got the solution yet.
Really appreciate everybody for trying.
So one walk in the loop. So walk, jump, walk, jump. Okay, let's see that. Have you figured it out yet?
The difference between a walk and a jump, Terry, they may not be able to see.
Oh, so each walk block makes your character walk one square on the path. Each jump block makes your character jump over thimbles and move him 2 squares on the path. Oh. So what should we probably do instead? Nope. Someone said run the loop 2 times or delete the first walk jump. Very good. So Bob, you got it correctly. Bob Lopes, you got it correctly. Run the loop twice instead of 3 times. All right. Let's go back here. And so as you noticed, within that, we had to recognize some patterns, and then we had to develop an algorithm that would solve that task. And these are some of the things that we look for in the elementary school level when we're unpacking computational thinking. Yolanda, middle school.
So in middle school, the standards say recognizing and defining computational problems and identifying sub-problems to consider while addressing a larger problem. And as a middle school teacher, I taught language arts and science. I know that those are things that not only do you need to do as a computational thinker, but you need to do that in math, you need to do that in science. Even in language arts, when you're thinking about the theme of a writing, you need to figure out what's the big problem and how did they all contribute to the theme of the writing. So this mindset is something that can serve students across different levels. So again, we listed the computational thinking standard. And the goal for grades 6 to 8, one of them that we identified, is that they begin to understand the components of computational thinking and solve the problem using it. Some evidence of learning that you may see is that they can identify what the problem or the scenario is. They can make a plan of action to solve the problem. They take the action. Sequential programming is something that they usually you'll see them do, and then they'll start to use repeated code and loops and functions as they go through the different steps. And so in that, I'm going to show you Make Code. Make Code, if you have not used it, is a great product from Microsoft that gives you simulators for different devices. It allows you to switch between block and languages, Java and Python. And so students can accomplish their goals in coding in a variety of ways. This is really good for upper elementary and middle school because you're going to have students that come to you at different levels. So Terry's going to stop sharing his screen, and then I'm going to show you an example of computational thinking using MakeCode. Can you see it, Terry?
Yes.
All right. And so this jumped to the projects page, if I'm not mistaken. Sorry. And what I want to show you is I'm going to actually go to the home page. We're going to, for this activity, we are going to use the microbit, but I'm going to the microbit home page here. And so you would start with lessons. What I like about the microbit home page, even if students don't have the device with MakeCode, you're going to see that it's a simulator. So I always either start with projects or lessons on this page. So we're going to go to lessons, and you will see that the lessons are grouped in different ways. You can search by age groups. You can search by programming language, or you can select a topic. And so when we were doing this, I chose the computational thinking. And the activity that I wanted to use was using animations and having students plan out how to make a volcano. So there's this lesson here. And what it does, this website gives you all of the lessons. It tells you what materials you'll need. And then the summary shows you what some of the different types of activities the students will do. And all of these are classified under computational thinking. And you're going to see different aspects of those 4 pillars be shown. So for example, if we wanted to use paper and pencil, they tell you to make a flip book. A flip book is a great way using Post-its and a pencil for students to kind of plan out what they're thinking. And it's an unplugged activity, and they are thinking about the subset of the problem in a different way. And as you progress through that, they have flow charts, all kinds of activities, and it gives you the lesson plans for it. So if you were to download it, it gives you the lesson plans. So we're going to actually go to the MakeCode here. And I'm going to open it in MakeCode. So you can use this in a variety of ways. You can have students come up with this by themselves, or you can give them the code and let them do it. As you see here, as you make changes to the
Screen is still on the dashboard, maybe.
Okay, just a second. Let me share a different tab. See it now? Okay, sorry about that. So it opened a new tab. So as you can see, if the students don't have a microbit, the simulator is right here, and it gives them the code. And so what they can do is play around with this. So if you can figure out, you see, this is supposed to be a volcano. So I'm gonna, as I make changes, it grays it out. Once I stop, I hit play, and you see there's my volcano. My volcano begins to erupt. There's the eruption, and then like a massive explosion there. And so students are able to program this, and they're solving the bigger problem of making an animation. And so that's just one way you can use this. This is really good. So that's the blocks, and you can switch between the 2 languages. So here, if we went to Python, it shows them, it's still the same in animation, but it shows them Python. If you click here, it gives them the JavaScript. So this is really, MakeCode is really good for students that are transitioning. They may be more comfortable using blocks. And I had I was in a workshop a couple of Saturdays ago, and the teacher, she told the students, you use whatever you are comfortable with. And then she said, if you have to do it in block and then convert it, that's not cheating. She said, you're still learning it. You just might not know the Python yet. She was like, if they ask you to put it in Python, make it in blocks and convert it. And so even that right there is a problem solving skill that we might have to tell students, because they're like, well, they told me to do it in Python, and I can see somebody struggling. But if you know something already, use the tools that you have. All right. There you go, Terry.
And something I meant to mention when I was doing the Tynker, let me share that again. And you kind of brought it up when you were showing the ability to go back and forth between blocks and text-based in different languages. Tynker also has that option as well at the bottom left corner. And you probably can't see it as well on this screen, but if you were to open up Tynker, create an account and go inside, you would notice that you can switch between the block-based Python, even though it's still blocks because they're catering toward elementary school student. But you'll notice that it has the syntax for Python inside the block. Same thing with Swift, which is an Apple-based programming language, and then JavaScript. So just by clicking at the bottom, students can still learn some of the syntax associated with that particular programming language. And I did want to do one more after we solve this one. So let me actually go back out. So this one was, is this the pattern one I was looking for? No. Maybe it's avoid the dimples. No. Okay, I don't think it's here. Let's try this. I think it's repetition groups. Yeah. Okay, so this is another example of pattern recognition. You'll notice there's 2 steps and then the candy, 2 steps and then the candy, 2 steps, and then looks like a gumdrop. And so you would need to repeat a set of sequences, right? A set of steps in this case. So this one would be one you would probably show before the other because it only requires 1 block. And it's just a matter of how many times do you need to repeat the steps that you need to take. So for this one, it's pretty simple. What do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And I think by default, it goes to the 9. But the cool thing about this tool is students can interact with the values. They could change the values. I'm a big believer in students failing first. I think you learn from those mistakes. I think we're doing a better job in teaching computer science, in that part of computational thinking is failing, and then getting back up and trying again, learning from those failures. It's a big.
And the thing is, as long as your class is a safe space, when I went to the Pi Academy, it was the first time that I had ever heard fail means first attempt in learning. Mm-hmm. And so as long as your students realize that, and they're not penalized for trying on things that aren't high stakes, then you will see that you get more engagement and students willing to try. So first attempt in learning. Absolutely. I actually look forward to failing when I do computer science so that I can learn something new about the process that I'm trying to achieve. Through computational thinking, I end up developing new algorithms, and I can't wait to see what comes from these failures. That's kind of the idea that I teach students. Autumn has asked a really great question. She said, with vertical planning in mind, do you think it's best to go from block to Python or to go straight from block to Java? Java is the eventual AP exam. Okay, so. Well, go ahead. You answer that first. And then okay. So I went to, in my own personal learning journey, I went from block to Python, and it was a much easier transition. And then I went to Java, and noticed the differences and the similarities. It depends on what kind of time you have. If you're talking about getting students in 6th grade, my personal preference is block to Python, because Python is a little less strict on the parameters. That would be my personal preference. And that's my personal preference, and that's where I'm going to leave it.
Yeah, I was going to say Python is a great first learning language, a first language to learn, computer science language to learn, computer programming language to learn, because it's very forgiving in the syntax. I don't think there really is a right or wrong answer when moving from blocks to a text-based programming language. I found that a lot of people in the high school level, when they're getting students coming from middle school, they moved from blocks to JavaScript first, and then from JavaScript to Java. I've seen that work well, but I'm not saying that is the way to do it. I think there's multiple ways to do that. One of the core principles of computational thinking is there's multiple ways to solve these problems. And so I don't think there's one perfect way or one, ideal way of moving from blocks to text-based coding. It just depends on what you're comfortable with as a teacher, what you're comfortable with teaching, and the resources that you have available to you.
So we have about 20 more minutes left, Terry. So
okay. So let's get back over here. So you were done with the make code code? So I'll let you talk about the high school standards and how that's, and then I'll get to CodeHS.
And so as you noted earlier, I said that I put grades K through 8 into word art to see, the visualization of those standards. Well, with the high school standards, they are all different for each course. And so what we had to do was pull some out. If you're in Georgia, you know that we have multiple courses at the grade levels 9 through 12. But in those, you will find computational thinking standards. There were just a lot of them. And so if you want to, this is an example right here. The students are going to create programs, and you'll see as you skim through it, they talk about algorithms, they talk about complexity. And so all of those are skills that if you have built a strong computational thinker and they have a great foundation, by now we're expecting them to know when they're using which skill they're using and what they're trying to do. And again, even that varies. I've seen and heard about some of our New York colleagues that are starting in elementary school with the students being able to identify what parts of the computational thinking process they're using. So again, even that varies, but by high school, we want them to be metacognitive about their learning and think about what it is that, think about their thought process and be able to figure out, okay, what I'm doing.
Yeah, so to piggyback on what Yolanda just said, by high school, we want them to fully understand what CT is and what those components are. And so some evidence of that might be flow charting. And ideally, we would want them to use computational thinking before they even start coding. So like decomposing, like breaking down what the problem is into smaller parts before they even start coding. And maybe they can do that. They can achieve that via flow charting or pseudocode. You may start noticing that sequential programming is being transposed to reusable functions now. So where before they have a whole bunch of lines, just, do this, do this, do this, do this, they may have now fully understood the benefits of using functions and how you can reuse those functions to achieve the same goal of just doing sequential programming. And at this point, you should start seeing fewer lines of repeated code as well. Again, going back to those functions. And so a popular tool that they use in high school is CodeHS. It is very robust and it has multiple languages as well. You can actually even switch back and forth between blocks and text still in CodeHS, although the blocks aren't as, I guess, glamorous or visually appealing as they are maybe in Tynker and MakeCode, but they still have the ability to use blocks. How do you decide which language to use? So with the AP-CSP course, well, and I'm speaking specifically for high school right now, it's language agnostic, meaning you can select whatever language you want. You're not tied to a particular language. As Autumn mentioned before, when you get to the AP-CSA course, that is a Java course, so you must teach that course using the Java programming language. For middle school and elementary, definitely for elementary, I would say blocks, although you may have some rare occasions where the students can do text-based coding. But I would definitely recommend blocks. You have the choice of Scratch, Tynker, even maybe some MakeCode. There's some other ones that are out there as well that I haven't talked about. And then what would you say for middle school, Yolanda?
So what we found at the middle school level was Python, easily translated across the things that they were doing, and Scratch, because the kids, and what would happen is sometimes they would code it in Scratch and then code it in Python and figure out where their discrepancies were. And so that was what we went with, because they were enamored of the Raspberry Pi, and Pi uses Python. And so that was just our natural progression. But again, you can still, the Raspberry Pi comes with Scratch. And so for kids who have a really strong base in that, they were able to just switch between the two. And even when I went to Pi Academy, Chris Thompson was the director of Seismic. He was using Scratch and had pages of code, and it was doing more complex stuff than I could do in Python. So it just depends on what it is. And as Natalie is saying, the most important thing is exposure to multiple languages, because who knows what language they'll be using by the time they're working in the industry. That's it. And I don't know if Janine is still here. She's with CSTA Georgia. She was meeting with some industry professionals, is that once a kid decides what language they are going to use, they just need multiple opportunities to practice in it. The conversation that she had said that, a lot of it was not that the kids didn't know the basics of it, they just didn't have multiple opportunities to practice. And so with that in mind, yes, by the time they're in high school, they should start, kind of leaning towards something. But again, it's whatever they are the most comfortable with. Absolutely.
And piggybacking on what Natalie mentioned in the chat, one of our APS-CS teachers, her son is a tech grad, and he's now in the industry. And he went from a few companies before landing at Amazon. And at each company, it was a different, flavor of language that particular company was using. So one company was using, Java, one was using Python, and so forth. So I think that exposure to multiple languages is a great idea. And I think a great starting point, like you mentioned, and like Aisha is saying, the one that they're most comfortable with, that is the one you should allow them to grow with. And until they're restricted, once they get into the AP-CSA course, then they're more restricted. But up until then, explore as much as they can.
And I see Sally has a great comment that it should align to your high school, your feeder high school. And that's true, because you would hate for kids to have 3 years, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade learning something and then be frustrated by, like they didn't teach us any of that. The good thing is the kids are very fluent. What happened for me, for those kids that were using Python, they're now 9th graders. Pseudocode came very easy to them, and they're like, "Is this it?" I'm like, but wait, it gets harder next year. And so if they are comfortable, their kids are very flexible. That's the good thing. So, but vertical planning, vertical.
And I was going to say, I think that's why the goal is to get them to be computational thinkers at each level, regardless of the programming language or the tool that they're using. That way they can apply that learning method across the board. As you know, once you've learned one programming language, it's a lot easier to learn another because you already have a foundation, just like learning a foreign language. Yes, language is just a syntax, correct.
And that's what I did an interview with a senior at Georgia Tech, and she's a senior computer science major, and she's done a couple of internships. And she said the last one was at Microsoft, and she said the biggest thing is to have kids be problem solvers. She's like, they don't expect you to know everything, but they also expect you to be independent and be able to figure things out and come for help when you need it. And she was like, just being able to solve problems is a great critical thinking and job skill to have.
Mm-hmm.
So Terry, we have about 10 minutes if we give 5 minutes for questions. So.
Okay, yeah. So I'm gonna do this quickly. So this will be like the high school level. Again, at this point, they should be able to recognize the components, those 4 pillars of CT, and start applying them to the tasks that they've been assigned to in their high school curriculum. So in this case on CodeHS, CodeHS does a great job of onboarding students with Carol the dog. I like to say Carol is a girl. That's just me. I love that. Some of the students like, is Carol a boy or girl? It's a girl.
Carol the person was a guy, correct?
I think he was, yes. But that's so what? So anyway, so the object of this is to stack 3 balls of what they're calling them pancakes. So create a function that makes pancakes to help Carol solve this problem. And the world should end up exactly like what you see on the right. So you start out this way and you should end this way. And so Carol comes with some predefined commands that she can do. And so if you were to click on the docs tab, and at this point, students are getting introduced to APIs and documentation for coding. And so CodeHS gives you this nice little documentation to reference key for students in case they don't remember all of the syntax, all of the functions. And so the object here would be, okay, create these functions that stack these balls, 3 balls at a time. So you would move first, stack 3, move, stack 3, move, stack 3. That will be the pattern that they've having to do. But before they would do that, they would want to decompose or break this thing down. Like, what is it that I need to do first? So break the problem down into smaller pieces, solve those smaller pieces, and before you know it, you've solved the entire thing. Same thing for the hurdle. The object here is to get Carol to jump over this hurdle. This is very similar to what we saw in Tynker. And again, you will want them to first break down, okay, how many times do I need to move before I get to a hurdle? And then once I'm at a hurdle, what do I need to do? So breaking down that problem into a smaller piece, solve that piece first, or solve those pieces first, and then recognize patterns, like how many times am I gonna have to do that? That might be an indication that, okay, I'm gonna probably wanna use a loop. And then ultimately, when they're done, they have this nice algorithm or these algorithms that they can now apply to other problems that they may occur. So that is one of the key components of computational thinking, the abstraction piece, being able to come up with an algorithm that you can apply to solve other problems. I see a question about your sketch. Oh, yes. Yeah, your sketch is very popular in high school because, as you know, by that time, students have a love for music. And so your sketch leverages the love for music and teaches computer science principles using music. All right, so before we leave, I just want you to totally grasp the idea that computational thinking is the highest order of problem solving. There's multiple problem solving methods that are out there. Computational thinking is just one of them, but it's becoming very popular. And as Yolanda mentioned, it's being used across multiple curricula. The goal is to achieve efficiency with computational thinking. And there's many solutions, they're not just one. I teach students that all the time, like, there's many ways to skin this cat. And I know that's a horrible analogy to use nowadays, but it's still one that I use. But there's not just one solution to this. So a lot of times they'll ask me, does this work? Is this good enough? And yeah, if it solves that problem, then it works. The confidence issue still arises with students, even at the high school level. They're still not as confident in what they've produced. And so getting them to be confident in what they're doing, understanding that there's more than one solution to this answer, understanding that you may make mistakes, but to keep on pushing, all that is part of the computational thinking process. And it's not an afterthought. It's the foundation. So it should be something that's threaded throughout. I think we mentioned that before. You know, CT isn't something that you arrive at. It should be something that is the foundation for your problem solving.
And I would have to agree with all of those, and also would like to add that, you know, you figure out what grade level you can introduce more complex terms to students. You know, so you may have a fifth grader that you can talk about the different pillars, and they can say, okay, I'm doing this now. You know, just metacognition, thinking about their thinking. And so the more we can get people, you know, I don't know why I did that. That's one of my pet peeves in life. I don't know. Well, what were you thinking about? What, you know, why, what was thought process? And so getting computational thinking to be a thought process is a goal here. So with that, we have about 9 minutes for questions or just answer thoughts. And so I've been loving the chat here, and everyone is saying ear sketch is amazing. That's my next project, my own personal learning journey, to become more familiar with that.
And we actually have a few colleagues that are on this, that are in the summit today, that have been using ear sketch for a while. I don't know if Mr. Llewellyn is on here.
He did his panel.
Yeah, he may be someone that you all should reach out to if you have any questions about ear sketch, or he actually has a music background. He's a audio engineer as well. So I would definitely pick his brain and see if I could put his up here. That is Mr. Llewellyn. So if you reach out to him, he may have some great resources.
I said he will answer. He likes.
Yeah. He's got great resources. He's doing great things with ear sketch in his school.
I'm curious to know, is anyone, you know, actively using the computational thinking pillars in their school?
Or did you have any questions about some of the tools that we've used today, or some other tools that you were thinking about using that we may have also used, or may have known folks that used it? Maybe we can shed some light on some of the other tools as well that you have questions about.
There's a really great project going on in New York City schools. They were here this past summer at the summit, and they talked about embedding computational thinking into an elementary school. And yes, I can show you how to get those lessons. Can you stop sharing for a second, Terry? New York City schools is doing some computational thinking, like embedding it in the school. And so I can't wait to hear more about their project.
Your voice and power on ear sketch. Yep, I saw that one as well. But they're coding camps during the summers in more places than Atlanta. There are. I can get you a list of those, Mr. Guy. David, I have your email, so I'll email you some of those.
Can you see my screen, Terry?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so I'm going to go back on the Microsoft web, on the Microbit web page is where I went here. If you go to lessons here, it gives you the subjects and the topics. And so if you want computational thinking, it sorts them for you. And what you have to realize is that this website, the Microbit, originated in Britain. That's the BBC, the British Broadcasting. You see, they have been working with computer science as a discipline, I think, longer than we have, and it's a little bit easier because they're more concentrated area. And so a microbit has some great resources if you're looking for different things. But you just back to the website, if you click here, it gives you the different topics. And so as you click on each one, if you're looking for something in digital arts, if you're looking for programming, it has all kinds of activities. And so it will drill down and tell you, you know, what age group. I generally leave it for all age group because a lot of my students are just beginning with the microbit. And so if they're just beginning, even the ones that say 7 to 11 years old sometimes aren't too easy, because again, some students are just picking up a microbit at age 12 or 13, whatever middle school is. So I got that by going to the microbit page, lessons, and then choosing computational thinking. And from there, any that you see with the green microbit symbol, you can get make code. It'll take you to make code. So I'm going to click on it, but the green symbols tell you that there's code available. And when I click on it, it may jump to a new tab, but you would just open it and make code right there. So let me, again, the green symbol tells you the code is available, and you open it and make code. Classroom is something that that was in beta last year, and that gives you a way of seeing what your students what your students are doing in make code. But yeah, to open it, again, the green symbol tells you that there's code available. Click there, and then you would open it in make code.
And I'm going to actually paste a copy of the slides here in the chat. And at the end of the deck, there's like a tab for resources so that you all can utilize those if you want. And you can just reuse the slide if you needed to present to stakeholders or whomever.
And one of the good, there's not a lot of good things about COVID, but one of the good things, David, about COVID is that a lot of camps are going virtual. I know even at Georgia Tech, some of our summer camps will be virtual. And so, people are now familiar with these virtual platforms. So there's no excuse now. We can't say, oh, I couldn't do it, or I can't get to it, which is a valid excuse. Now it's virtual. So with that, that pretty much wraps us up. We're almost at time.
Autumn was asking about Raspberry Pi camps being virtual.
So when I was on the Pi Academy page, they have not posted anything. And I think that's because it is so hands-on. And they did give you some materials, but some materials they kept. And so I don't think that they have decided yet, but those are usually offered in the summer. And if we hear anything with CSTA Georgia, we'll be sure to send it out. And yes, if we hear anything, but as of right now, they don't have anything posted for the Pi Academy. Their coolest projects for students is virtual. So if you have students making any kinds of projects, check that out, coolestprojects.org. It is virtual. And PK is doing a 4-week STEM camp using circuit playgrounds. Do you have a link, PK, that teachers can use to sign up? If you can share it in the event chat, because this one's going to close in a second. Okay, it's only for their students, but teachers that are interested, he can share the curriculum.
Yeah, do you have the link so that the teachers can pass that on to students who might be in the area who may not know about it?
And Aviva, I have to say, your resource page is awesome. Thank you so much for doing that. And there it is. So if you have not had a chance to look at her resource document, man, she's doing a great job of summarizing and grabbing things. So take a look at that resource document. All right, with that, we're going to close out the session and just we'd just like to say thank you. Thank you guys for coming and listening, and hope to see you at some of the other sessions.
It's great seeing new faces and familiar faces, or names in this case.
Yes. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Mr. Guy. Thank you, Mrs. Hall.
Thank you, Ms. Holloway.
Thank you, Sally. Thank you, Johnny. Thank you, PK, as usual. Hey, PK, holler at me. I need to ask you about something, by the way.
PK always sends us love. All right, so we're going to go back to the reception area.
Okay. Well, again, all those sessions will be recorded and put on our YouTube channel at a later date. So if you missed some of it, or you know a colleague that missed some of it and they wanted to attend, just let them know that they can watch the videos at a later time. Love you too, bro.